The anime starts in the village of Yukinoshita, where we see a boy with a bird nest on his head called APPARE in a jail cell. He cares a lot about being logical and building machines but lacks emotional intelligence. He does mathematical calculations in the cell. How did he get all that paper in prison anyway? The scene then pans to a dojo where the master Kosame receives a message to visit the Lord in his mansion. In his mansion, the Lord questions Kosame about APPARE since he once taught him before. He got expelled in 3 days, by the way. Kosame tells the Lord that APPARE is an eccentric guy who builds weird gadgets. The Lord tells Kosame that he will be in charge of APPARE and responsible for anything he does. In the prison cell, the prisoner, acting tough, presses APPARE about not introducing himself, but APPARE gives zero shits and tells him that introductions are a waste of time. The prisoner steps on one of APPARE's pieces of paper and APPARE proceeds to hit his foot with a hammer. As the big boss of the prisoners steps up to take on APPARE, APPARE assures him that it would not be necessary and casually walks towards the bars to pick the lock and walk out. He then shuts the cell door as the other prisoners flail their arms trying to escape. When Kosame goes to the prison and doesn't see APPARE, he informs the Lord and the Lord gathers his men to capture APPARE. In the next scene, Kosame is outside of a dilapidated workshop. He bangs on the door calling for APPARE but meets a small robot instead. The small robot starts flying up towards Kosame and then explodes with a bunch of confetti. APPARE presents himself at the window of the top floor, mumbling to himself once again. Kosame then goes into the workshop and talks to APPARE about the time he got expelled 3 years ago. APPARE and Kosame were sparring when APPARE shot a net out of his weapon to defeat Kosame. A win is a win, why are you salty? Kosame, now panicking about the men coming after APPARE, tells him he needs to escape, but APPARE, just like before, couldn't care less. Kosame begs APPARE. Soon after, we can see them crawling down a shaft. They reach a body of water, which is the dock for APPARE's ship, and the two go on the steamship which APPARE built. He talks about wanting to make it the fastest ship in the world. Soon later, the men chasing after APPARE reach the outside of the dock where Kosame is convincing them that he can make APPARE turn himself in for escaping prison. At that moment, APPARE comes out of the dock in his ship and Kosame and the rest of the men jump towards the ship and hang on the edge. In the end, only Kosame manages to go onto the ship. They stayed in the sea for a couple of days because the ship ran out of fuel and couldn't move. On day 8, a big ship passes by and in the next scene, APPARE's boat is being pulled by the large vessel heading for Los Angeles, the city of angels. In LA, the captain allows APPARE and Kosame to use their storehouse until someone comes to rent it. Kosame desperately wants to go back to Japan and begs APPARE to fix the boat and go back, but APPARE refuses as the boat was experimental and not a permanent one. Without any money, they go out to find jobs. Later, APPARE stumbles upon a poster for the Transamerica Wild Race and follows the car that was throwing the posters. He follows it to a racetrack where APPARE then spends the remaining money that they had to go watch the car race. There, a man called Seth promotes a car made by the company he is in. Because that company is sponsoring the race, the car will be driven in the race, and the man calls on anyone to take up the challenge for the cash prize of $1.51 million if they win. At that moment, APPARE impulsively decides to join the race. At a restaurant, when APPARE and Kosame are discussing the car he will make, a small boy walks into the restaurant asking people whether they have seen a man with a certain tattoo on his neck, but walks out when nobody knows who he is referring to. At night, Kosame and APPARE sneak inside the racetrack again and see someone driving the car on the racetrack. APPARE goes on track and almost gets ice-skate into the next dimension, but the driver skillfully manages to avoid APPARE and crashes into the fence. A woman jumps out of the car. Her name is Jing Xiaolian and she is a chore girl who secretly drives the car at night because she isn't allowed to as a woman. Xiaolian then starts fighting Kosame. Damn, so violent. Meanwhile, APPARE checks out the car. In the morning, she tells her boss that she broke the car when driving it last night, but instead of getting mad, her boss brushes it off, asking if she had dreamt it. Unexpectedly, the car was working perfectly fine. In the next scene, the same kid before is getting beat up by a group of adults. Kosame sees this and jumps in to save the boy, but as soon as he grabs his katana, remembers a memory and starts hyperventilating. The man points a gun at Kosame, but suddenly his gun gets shot by another man. The man's name is Dylan and he is part of 1003, a trio of powerful outlaws. The bullies later run away and the small boy asks Dylan about the man with the snake tattoo on his neck. Dylan tells him to forget about finding the man. After fainting, the boy later wakes up in the storehouse with APPARE and Kosame. His name is Hototo and he has traveled far away from his family to avenge his late father who was killed by the man with the snake tattoo. The next morning, Hototo tells APPARE about the weather and gives information about the regions the race route goes through. The captain informs Kosame that there is a rich kid who wants to rent the storehouse and they have to leave. He is a lion, the son of BNW's owner, and he is being accompanied by Sophia Taylor. When a lion is waiting in a tent for his belongings to be moved into the storehouse, Kosame and APPARE go into his tent requesting for Al to leave the storehouse as it is. Al rejects them, mentioning he needs training space for the race. APPARE, hearing the word machine, rushes up to Al's car to inspect the engine and later asks Al to race him. Al agrees to race him in 10 days and they both put up the storehouse and Kosame's katana on the line. Later, APPARE drives his Segway while Kosame chases him. They see Xiaolian walking out of the race stadium and Xiaolian allows them to take the extra materials stored in the warehouse. Carrying the parts back, APPARE tells Xiaolian to come watch his race with Al. 10 days later, APPARE, Kosame, and Hototo reach the race location and Al mocks their car. Xiaolian also shows up and offers to hold Kosame's katana for him. The route is from a dead tree, then around a large rock and back to the tree again. With everyone's hands on the dead tree, they rush to their cars. Al jumps into his car and accelerates, leaving Kosame and APPARE's car behind. On the other hand, APPARE's car slowly picks up speed and they catch up to Al. In front of them was a cliff and while Al drives around it, APPARE accelerates and drives over the cliff. APPARE and Kosame are now at Al's tail and they quickly make a turn around the rock to drive back to the tree. Still, they are behind Al and need a way to catch up. When APPARE gives the signal, Kosame pulls a red lever which launches the car forward. The part of the car which Kosame is standing in and holding on to for dear life suddenly flies up as well. Kosame along with that car segment rockets towards the tree. When they touch the ground, Kosame sits in fatigue, but when he sees Al coming towards him, Kosame starts dashing towards the tree. At the same time, Al reaches the front of the tree. He jumps out of his car to roll to the tree but realizes that Kosame is already there. After the race, Al accepts defeat and gives his car to APPARE. APPARE gives him his Segway as a consolation gift. In the next scene, Kosame is working at the restaurant and overhears a conversation about buying cars. He thinks of an idea to sell the car that Al had given to get money since APPARE will not use it in the race anyway. When he rushes back, he sees that it has already been disassembled as APPARE plans to use the parts for his car, so Kosame goes back to work. At the racetrack, Xiaolian demands to be tested for racing and says she will quit if she is not given the chance. Her boss, seeing her passion, allows her to race in a few days and allows her to only use the worst car they have. He tells her that this is her last race before she is fired from the job. Xiaolian pushes the car to APPARE's storehouse since it broke down when she was driving it. Kosame and Hototo see this and bring her to APPARE. Kosame calls for APPARE and APPARE tells Kosame to not bother him unless it is food, but when he hears Xiaolian, he stops what he is doing to listen. I would do anything for Xiaolian too. He inspects the car and sends it to Al to service it. On race day, Kosame, Hototo, and Al come to watch. Xiaolian is racing David, one of the racers who mocks her abilities. When the race starts, Xiaolian takes the lead, but because her engine is worse than the other car, she loses her lead and now tails behind. On lap 9, she finally passes David after streamlining behind him the whole race. At the last turn, David realizes he cannot win and drives into Xiaolian's car, causing her to swerve out of the track as David drives to the finish line. Her boss punches David for almost crashing one of the cars and also being a pussy. He commends Xiaolian for being able to control the car to stop it from crashing. He gives Xiaolian the car and the mechanics offer to service the car for her. The next episode starts with Kosame telling APPARE that he will be joining the race with APPARE and Kosame since makes a good guide. At night, Hototo, Kosame, and APPARE, who is still asleep, walk to the venue of the pregame party where meet Xiaolian. They reach the reception, but the receptionist tells them that they cannot enter in the clothes they are wearing because they don't adhere to the formal dress code. Seth tells them that only Xiaolian can enter and calls his men to APPARE, Kosame, and Hototo out. At that moment, a distinct car-blaring music stops in front of the venue. A man with crazy-looking hair steps out of the vehicle. He is Crazy TJ, one of the 1003. He walks in front of Seth asking if his attire is okay, and Seth, feeling intimidated, allows him to go in. APPARE appears next to TJ demanding that he should be allowed to enter since TJ is also allowed. The rest stand there bewildered and intimidated, but surprisingly, TJ tells APPARE that he has cool hair and brings him in for a drink. Seth folds and allows the rest to enter. Later, an announcer explains the rules of the race. The race starts in LA and finishes in New York. In each city that the racers pass through, they must stop there for at least 8 hours. Suddenly, two men slam the door open. The masked man is Gil of the 1003 and his partner is Chase. Everyone is surprised because he has never shown himself before. When Dylan is on the balcony looking at his pendant with a picture of a woman's face on it, Hototo goes to him and questions him about the snake tattoo once again. Hototo tells him that the tattooed man killed his father and Hototo wants to take revenge. Dylan advises Hototo to forget about it, but when Hototo asks Dylan what he would do in that situation, Dylan tells him the man is Gil. As soon as Hototo hears this, he rushes in, but Dylan holds him back and tells him to wait to do it during the race. The next day is the first day of the Transamerica Wild Race, the pre-race. When the go signal is shown, every driver accelerates except for APPARE, who is still fixing his car. Finally, APPARE gets into his car and starts driving. Thus, the race begins. The cars reach a train track with a train passing through. APPARE does some calculations and manages to go around it. After swerving back onto the track, a red car bumps into APPARE's car, causing him to lose control. In the end, Dylan wins the pre-race and APPARE comes in last place. Since they have to wait 8 hours to drive again, they park their car. The red car which bumped them earlier stops in front of Kosame, and a man apologizes to Kosame for bumping their car. He introduces himself as Richard Reisman. During this time, Hototo continues seeing Gil's henchmen at different places. Later in the day, Al and Sophia meet Kosame when he is practicing his sword skills. They both spar and both of them are fighting on equal footing when Kosame suddenly freezes up and Al hits his sword away. After dinner, APPARE and Hototo are walking back when Hototo runs off saying he needs to do something. Hototo reaches a forest where he hides behind a bush and overhears Chase's plan to block the entrance of the Valley of Despair and blow up the rocks where the racers will be passing through. Just then, one of the men notices Hototo. They tie him up and Chase tells his henchmen to put him in a box and blow him up together with the dynamite later. Back at the parking lot, Kosame realizes Hototo is gone and asks APPARE. He tells APPARE that teammates need to lend an ear to each other. Kosame then goes to look for Hototo and bumps into Richard, who tells him that Hototo has probably been captured by Gil, who is camping outside the city. Kosame reaches Gil's camp and tells them that he is looking for Hototo. Chase tells him to piss off. Kosame sees Hototo's axe and hears a sound coming from inside the box and demands to check the box. Chase allows him to look but tells him that he will pay the price if nothing is in it. Kosame proceeds to open the box but only finds a prairie dog. Chase points his gun at Kosame. Kosame calls the prairie dog Hototo and walks away casually. Good save. 8 hours pass and Kosame still hasn't found Hototo. The rest of the cars drive and APPARE has no choice but to go as well. At the last second, APPARE's car engine stops. He tells Kosame that he will keep working on his car, allowing Kosame to look for Hototo. Soon, Kosame finds Hototo and they rush back. APPARE starts the car and Hototo tells him about Gil's plan. APPARE then tells them that the car is now a hybrid vehicle with a steam and gasoline engine. At the entrance of the Death Valley, the other drivers are stuck and are trying to move the rubble out of the way. APPARE drives past Gil to inform the rest about the trap that Gil has set. 2 of Gil's men are found by Dylan. Meanwhile, Gil and Chase ram through the stone barricade that they created. Hee barricade. Get it? Like my channel, hee. The other drivers follow suit. Once Gil passes an arch, he signals his men to blow up the arch. Luckily, the other drivers are able to pass before the rubble falls. On the other hand, APPARE is not fast enough and barely escapes the falling rubble. As a result, the back of APPARE's car breaks and he needs to find a way to repair it with the limited parts he has. Since that option is basically impossible, APPARE decides to pull the car himself to the next supply point. Bro chose the harder option. Fortunately, Al and Xia Lian drive back to APPARE and take turns towing his car. At night, they stop to eat and sleep. During his sleep, Kosame has a recurring nightmare of his mother being killed right in front of him. He takes a walk to calm himself down and sees APPARE sitting on a rock. APPARE asks him why he had done illogical things such as killing the engine and waiting for Hototo. Kosame tells him that such decisions are part of being human. In the morning, the cars are waiting at the starting line. When the green flag is signaled, Al, Xia Lian, and APPARE's group stand in front of Gil's car. They expose his deeds of blowing up the Death Valley, but when Seth tells them that no rule prohibits such behavior, all of them move out of the way except for Hototo. He stands in front of the car and talks about his father who had been killed. The spectators start throwing rubbish at Hototo. Suddenly, Gil steps in front of them and demands them to stop. He takes off his mask showing his cutie patootie face and reveals that he is not the real Gil. Instead, his name is actually Tristan and both of them are known as the Bad Brothers. They impersonate Gil so people will stay out of their way. APPARE secretly disassembles the Bad Brothers' car, making them stay behind while everyone else passes. APPARE's car is also sent to the workshop and Al and Xiaolian wait for them. Soon, when APPARE's car is fixed enough to start, Al, Xiaolian and APPARE's team start moving. They see the cars that drove before them are broken and run to investigate. All of the drivers are dead except for Richard, who has been hit in the head. He tells them that men on horses with snake tattoos on their necks appeared. Richard passes on their message that everyone in this race will die. Richard goes back to the city for help while they try to find the men on horses. Soon, they reach a desolate town and they ask the townspeople whether they have seen the men on horses. Xiaolian, Hototo, and Kosame ask a bartender at a saloon, but she advises them to leave the town. Al and APPARE speak with the sheriff about the situation and together with him they go out to find the men on horses. At the same time, Xiaolian, Hototo, and Kosame walk out of the restaurant and are surrounded by a group of men with snake tattoos. Luckily, Al, APPARE, and the sheriff see them. They rush to help them, but it turns out that the sheriff also has the snake tattoo. They try to fight back against the men but fail. Kosame attempts to defeat them using his katanas but once again remembers his past and hyperventilates. In the end, the rest are captured except for Kosame since he is the most cowardly amongst the group. He sits there contemplating his life choices. The saloon owner invites him into the shop and helps him overcome his past trauma. APPARE in the rest and hung in the middle of town. Suddenly, a silhouette is seen hidden behind the dust. Kosame walks towards them with a straight face. He is not here to mess around, huh? One of the snake-tattooed men takes out his gun. Once again, Kosame recalls the same memory, but this time he overcomes it and defeats the man. He proceeds to obliterate every single one of those guys and cuts off the ropes hanging his friends. Somehow, the fake sheriff is still able to stand. Kosame pulls out his secret move and kills him. Together, they thank the owner of the saloon and drive to the supply point. In a meeting room, Seth tells them that the next supply point has been moved to a new location and the racers will have to use a different route for higher safety. Richard is a pussy and quits the race. Since there is still time before the race starts again, the racers go to a hot spring to chill. Xiaolian asks Sophia about her relationship with Al, but Sophia says that she sees Al as a brother. Al got brother zone, sucks to be you. APPARE also spends time revamping his hybrid engine. The next morning, the race resumes. Sophia and Richard board the train to New York, where the drivers are also headed to. All of the drivers fight to win first place and are going at the same speed as the train. Seth, who is spectating on the train, announces that a new era of cars has arrived. Everyone on the train bets that the car will reach the bridge first. While Sophia and Richard are talking, Richard is called. He is brought to a room and an old man berates him for not putting a stop to the race yet. The man tells Richard that the cars must not cross the bridge before the train and commands Richard to stop Dylan and TJ. Richard grabs the man by his neck and flings him out the window of the moving train. Whistling a tune, Richard strolls back to his seat and tells Sophia that the drivers will not reach New York safely. Sophia asks why and he tells her that he is Gil. Gil shoots the roof of the train, causing it to explode and detach. Gil's henchmen called the Snakes take over the train by killing the train drivers and throwing explosives. The train soon comes to a stop on the bridge. The racers stop their cars to survey what has just happened. Gil, now pretending to be Richard, runs towards the racers shouting for help. He gets shot from behind and Kosame rushes to help, but Dylan, sensing something fishy happening, stops Kosame. Gil stands up with a smirk and shows the snake tattoo in his eyes. Al hides behind the car door and asks if everyone on the train is safe. Gil tells him to step forward and tells him that what Al wants to ask is Sophia safe? Damn, he got you with that, Al. Gil throws Sophia's hat to Al and Al sees bloodstains on her hat. He immediately takes out his gun and a fight commences. All of them get absolutely destroyed. TJ and Dylan join in on the fight but don't help much as they both also lose to Gil. Gil and his men shoot the car, causing APPARE's car to be set on fire. He shouts to stop and Gil obliges. Never mind, he shoots APPARE. Somehow Kosame moves faster than a bullet, and he takes the bullet for APPARE. Gil lets them off the hook and gets back on the train, which starts moving again. APPARE loses his composure and doesn't know what to do to save Kosame. Fortunately, the Bad Brothers arrive at the scene and they help bring Kosame to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor tells them that Kosame may not be saved. APPARE loses his composure again and storms out of the room. Al tells his mechanics to swiftly fix the car, and Seth informs Al about the situation with the police and their search for the train. The police are not willing to help them as they are low on manpower and cannot deal with Gil. While walking away, Al sees APPARE, and APPARE tells Al he intends to give up on fixing his car and the race. At night, APPARE contemplates whether he should give Kosame a visit. Chase confronts him and offers him food, but APPARE just walks away. He weeps in the rain under the moonlight, not knowing what to do. Later, Hototo finds him and gives him some bad news. They rush to the hospital. Slamming the door open, they see Kosame with a piece of cloth over his face. Kosame blows the piece of cloth away, telling APPARE that it is just a prank. Kosame talks to APPARE and convinces him to not quit. All the racers discuss the next point of action at the supply point, knowing that the race might be cancelled. APPARE joins in and encourages all of them to work together to defeat Gil and save the race. The scene cuts to an undisclosed location where Gil is keeping his hostages, Sophia and 2 men. They ask both of the men to kill each other for a chance to escape. They fight the gun, and eventually one is killed and the other is let go. While the man is running away, Gil shoots him in the back. The racers depart from the station point. At night in a tent, Seth tells them Gil's location and tells them the plan. Kosame enters the tent insisting that he also helps. In the morning, they arrive at the town where Gil is in. The Bad Brothers provide them with smoke signals to tell the rest when Gil or the hostages have been found. They split up into pairs. Dylan and TJ walk through the entrance to act as a diversion. They kill all of Gil's men while the others sneak in through bushes. The snakes give Gil news about the race when one of his men suddenly rushes in, telling Gil that Dylan and TJ have entered. Gil tells him to kill them all and instructs his snakes to kill the rest since he knows that they have also come. The pairs each do their part by fighting all of the snakes. A snake is shooting Chase and Seth, so hide behind a well. Chase runs towards the snake and tries to shoot him, but he is shot in the heart and dies. The snake finds Seth behind the well, but Seth shows him ransom. The snake brings him to Gil and takes the money away from Seth. Unexpectedly, Chase walks in, takes and out the padding under his shirt. He thanks the snake for showing him the way and fires both signals. All of the racers notice the signal. The guy didn't follow his order to slaughter everyone, so Gil shoots him like 20 times. Chill, he was dead when you shot him the first time. APPARE, Al, Xiaolian, Hototo, Kosame, and Tristan are outside the building. They hear gunshots and rush into the building to see Seth and Chase injured. Chase tries to shoot Gil again, but Gil avoids all the bullets and kicks him. Gil tries to shoot Al, but the Kosame deflects the bullets with his katana. Everyone else goes behind him and they wait for his gun magazine to run out before rushing towards Gil. Still, they are unable to defeat Gil, and he tells them that Sophia is on a train en route to crash into Chicago Station. Gil and Kosame attack each other and Kosame is defeated. The rest join but stand no chance against Gil. He chokeholds APPARE and wants to end his life, but APPARE tells him that he fell for his trick. The signal rocket flies from a contraption, setting Gil's coat on fire. This buys enough time for them to stand back up, but this time Gil is serious and wants to end all of their lives. Suddenly, a bullet coming from Dylan's gun flies right by Gil's neck. TJ and Dylan arrive and stay back to fight Gil while the rest tries to stop the train. Al and Xiaolian jump on board the train while Hototo shoots arrows from the car. They defeat Gil's men and try to stop the train but fail. Al attempts to free Sophia but is unable to break the metal chain. APPARE decides to drive in front of the train to stop it. He attaches the car to the front of the train to drive against the direction of it. The citizens in the station scream in horror. Hototo opens the emergency valve and increases the pressure in the engine. Kosame pulls the red lever. The car rockets forward against the moving train. Dylan and TJ defeat Gil. APPARE somehow manages to stop the train. The racers go back to the supply point and TJ sends Gil to the police station. The race resumes for the final stretch to reach the finish line in New York. Dylan is leading. TJ drives right beside him with Al just behind them and Xiaolian in fourth. The Bad Brothers are far behind as they left half a day later than the rest. APPARE is far behind Xiaolian and he has one more turn left while the others are heading in a straight line for the finish. APPARE activates the booster and the car zooms forward. When they make a sharp left turn, the car starts flying and drives against the wall before reaching the ground again. Dylan, TJ, Al, and Xiaolian are basically in a straight line towards the finish. Somehow, APPARE's car darts forward so fast that he manages to get the dub. Back at the harbor, Kosame tells APPARE that he found a ship back to Japan. APPARE tells him that he is not going back and walks away. On the day Kosame is leaving, APPARE runs to the dock to see that the ship Kosame is on has already gone. He shouts his regrets to not ask Kosame to stay, but Kosame is right behind him. He tells APPARE that he has decided to stay after all, and they walk back to the storehouse together.